And there we are. We're live. All right. Thanks, everybody, for hanging with us. Due to some technical difficulties, I was not able to get everybody linked in here and get this up and running as quickly as I could. But I think the computer has finally decided to cooperate, or Gmail has decided to cooperate. It could just be a conspiracy that Google is trying to squash 2A Tuesdays. However, our right to talk about 2A things shall not be infringed, right? Because that's what the First Amendment says. So I'm going to work on posting this over on the gun channel side here real quick and simulcast over there. While I'm doing that, I will let a couple people say hello and introduce themselves. So we'll start with Travis P11.
Hey, what's going on, man? I appreciate the invite. I do apologize. I've got a bit of a head cold going on right now, so hopefully my voice holds out. I actually shut up for once. But guys, again, make sure you check out gunchannels.com. Everybody that's on this panel, check out their channels on YouTube. And also, we got the Caliber Corner podcast Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Central Time. Do check it out on gunchannels.com. Variety of topics. A lot of the guys on the panel here are on that podcast too, so it's a good time. So check it out. Thanks for the invite, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for being here. Okay, next up we've got Other Travis, which is Midnight Range TM, also known as Food Travis. How are you doing, sir?
Good. Yeah, what he said. Except Sunday nights, 10:30 Eastern.
Sunday nights, 10:30 Eastern.
9:30 Central Time for those that speak regular.
That can't use clocks right. Yeah, if you can't use the clock right, then it's 9:30.
I still use the sun.
Gotcha. All right. And then moving right along, we've also got Mr. Jim Burgess joining us.
Thanks for the invite. I think this might be my first time joining this show.
I think you were here last week with us, weren't you?
I may
here for the Deer Hunt chat.
No, I wasn't here for that one. I may have been on one other time, but
the one before that. What did we talk about the week before deer hunting? It was I don't know. They're already. I've had enough of these already. This is number 6, so I'm already kind of losing track of what we were talking about. But yeah, either way, if you haven't been here before, welcome, and if you have been here before, then
welcome back.
Then welcome back. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got a few other people have joined us in our panel here since I was clicked away from the screen. So we've got everybody's favorite tactical chicken, Mr. Gizzard Gary.
Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely, absolutely. And always a pleasure having my neighbor to the south join us. We've got David Bowling. How are you doing, Kingpin?
Doing well, man. Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate it.
You betcha, you betcha. And then so far in our panel, last but certainly not least, coming to us from behind enemy lines in occupied California, we've got the tactical pickle, the California cucumber, Mr. Calaveras 32 Special.
Now let's be honest here. It really is least. Yeah, thanks for the invite, Sandhills.
Absolutely, absolutely. Alrighty, so thanks everybody for joining us. I'm going to keep working on getting everything posted over here and get simulcast over. And while I do that, the main thing I want to cover tonight is kind of an offshoot or just a continuation of something that happened. We discussed Saturday morning on Caliber Corner over on Travis P11's channel. And this is something that Jim Burgess had brought up and was talking about a conversation that he had on social media here in the last few days before that. And it just really, it brought to light a few different thoughts, few different opinions. And I know Travis didn't have a whole morning to devote to just talking about the one topic on Caliber Corner, but I had to drop out about that same time. I had to get to work, and so I didn't really get a chance to sound off, and so I kind of want to revisit some of that. So real quick, Jim, would you just go ahead and, for anybody who wasn't part of Caliber Corner or who hasn't caught that yet, can you just kind of set the stage and let everybody know kind of what's going on and why you brought this to our attention to begin with?
Sure thing. I have a bad habit of getting into debates with various people on social media over political matters, and as we all know, guns are politics. So I was actually speaking with a relatively well-known trainer who I'd just as soon not name because it's not really relevant. Hey, some people might think it is, but he made good points about trying to keep ourselves as a community kind of accountable to each other. Uh, all of the things we should be doing about preaching firearms safety, proper storage, the need for some level of training, although I would imagine that a professional trainer would say we need much more training than you or I might say. Be that as it may, we got off into the topic of policing ourselves. And one of the points that he was making was we need to police ourselves to the point where an FFL that sees a new shooter walking into the store, and you can kind of tell. All of us have been new shooters at some point. We're excited to buy our first new pistol. We might have gotten our license to carry or CHL or whatever your state calls it 3 weeks ago, and so we're going to pick up a pistol and start getting ready to carry it. And one of the points that he made was, in a situation like that, the FFL should kind of be that traffic cop, so to speak, where they kind of verify, how much training have you had? How are you prepared to store this in a locked container away from and out of the reach of children? How much training have you had? Those sorts of things. Almost, it was to the point where it was brought up like a car dealer will educate you about features of your car, and I don't see how that really maps to firearms ownership because we're not operating our firearms at 75 miles an hour on I-10. But it really boiled down to we should be expecting FFLs and each other to hold ourselves to that level of accountability before those who would legislate everything come and do it for us, basically.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the gist. Now, in full disclosure, Jim was kind enough to share the conversation. He was able to keep that and basically copy and paste it, so I could read. I pretty much read the whole conversation the way it went down on social media, and I know that you had said when you were on Caliber Corner that it was somebody that we all knew who this person's name or what this person's name was. We know who they are, but when I saw who it was, I mean, it was kind of eye opening that this person, we won't name that person. It doesn't matter who it was, but it was kind of surprising that this is somebody who typically from all the interviews I've ever seen from that person. Typically I expect that we pretty much agree with just about everything. I mean, we kind of see things the same way. All of us in here pretty much agree with each other as far as the main things go, as far as rights go and infringements and things like that. And from everything that I've seen, so did this person. But the way that it read, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but the way that this read, it was almost a discussion. I'm guessing it was on this person's post or this person's page or whatever.
Right.
But between you and somebody else who you didn't know who that was, right? I mean, somebody like yourself who maybe isn't well known through the whole firearm industry, who didn't agree with everything that you agree with, or you two kind of see things differently. And that's fine. That's good. It's healthy. But at the same time, the well-known person kind of seemed like they were agreeing with the guy that wasn't agreeing with you. And
Yeah, and that's even okay, but
took up the I don't want to say how I want to say that, but just kind of took up the argument in, it was definitely in the corner of that person, to the extent of just what you just said. If we don't start policing ourselves, or more to the point, each other, then we just should expect the legislation to come, and then all of us who don't like it, basically they're going to laugh at us and say, "Hey, we told you, we tried to warn you. You guys are stupid now if you're whining about it." I mean, that's kind of like almost the impression I got is hey, we need to do something about this. I guess what really ultimately the feeling that I got, it felt a lot like right after the Las Vegas shooting, when the NRA jumped on the bandwagon for pro bump stock legislation. And it kind of felt like the people who should have our backs pulled the rug out from under us. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing from this well-known person saying, "Hey, we just as well give up some things because it's going to get taken away anyway. So why not give it up on our terms?" And I was just sitting there shaking my head. I was reading that one night. I got that conversation after I was in bed, and I was sitting there in bed reading that, and I'm just sitting there shaking my head. And even my wife was like, "What's going on?" I said, "Hey, I'm reading this conversation between Jim and these other two people, and it's just not what I expected was going to happen." So really, that's kind of what I want to get into here, is just to say, at what point does personal responsibility spill over into policing each other or calling each other out on safety and safe storage and things like that? And then as we go there's a couple things from that conversation, specific points I kind of want to bring up, but for now, again, we're going to do the way I like to do it, just go around the room, round table. I'm not going to go around the horn. Real quick, I will welcome Squib. I didn't see you there, so welcome to the chat, Squib. I don't know if you're available to talk right now because it's not 9:30 yet. Oh, there you are. So we'll let Squib get all the way done with work, and I expect we'll hear more from him here in a little bit.
Thanks.
But just overall, I mean, at what point do we draw the line on, if somebody comes into a gun store and clearly it's their first gun that they've ever bought, how responsible is the gun dealer for making sure that this person knows what they're doing with it?
Well, I would think that aside from all that, what pops into my brain would be precedent. And you see it all the time when people start going anti-gun nuts. They well, even the NRA thinks that this should happen. Well, even 90% of gun owners voted that this should happen. So they're just looking for a precedent to be set. If they can go and say, well, look, even at gun shops, they show you how to use the weapon now. They do this, they do that. It's just a precedent so they can set laws that way. Do I think that the gun owner is responsible to teach me how to use a firearm? No. As far as the car analogy goes, most of the time when you're buying a car and they're showing you the features, these are new features. They're not showing you where the gas pedal's at. They're not showing you where the seatbelt or the brake is at. They're showing you how to use the touch screen. They're showing you how to use the new heated seat. So I would expect the same thing if I walked into a gun store. If there's a new gun out with a new feature, hey, check this out. This is how you operate it, in case you didn't know. The first rifle I bought, I walked into the gun store and told the guy, he said, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm a new gun owner. I want to buy a gun today. He said, what are you looking for? He said, are you going to hunt? I said, no, I'm going to target shoot. I want an AR. And he took me right over to the rifles and showed me exactly everything I needed to know, and I bought it.
Well, exactly right, and that's one of the points that I want to bring up. I mean, if we're going to use the car dealer, I don't want to say analogy, but I mean, if we're going to liken this to buying a car, has anybody ever been required to show their driver's license to buy a car? I don't know how every state works, and I know that if you're going to finance a car, then you have to have a photo ID to run a credit app because that's part of the Patriot Act. You can't run credit without photo ID now. But if you're just going to walk in and drop cash on the table and buy an automobile, do you even have to prove that you can legally drive that car? Is the car dealer responsible for making sure that you have the legal requirements to drive that car? Because I don't believe they are.
No, never.
You have to be able to you have to be able to do some of the other things involved with it, though, like get the tags and do all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, by sort of a roundabout way, I would imagine that there's certain things that you have to provide, right?
No,
No.
I purchased several used cars, and I've never had to show anything. Even when I go down to get the tags, I just have to take an insurance card and a bill of sale and the title, and I didn't have to show any ID or anything. And they wrote me up a registration after paying my registration fee, and I'm out the door. So I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if you're selling a car to somebody, you're going to sell it to some kid that's 15 years old. You'd probably want to make sure that he's old enough to legally drive the car off your driveway. I don't think you can sell a car to somebody that's underage. But I've never.
Well, you can't legally sign a contract in the state of Nebraska until you're 19. So I mean, you probably should know that and make sure of it. But again, I mean, I don't know, how does that work? Can you buy a car? I guess it's not a contract.
Oh, you can get cash. You could go into a dealership and buy a car and drive right out of there if you want to. I don't think they'd even check your driver's license.
Yeah, I don't think that's not a requirement. Now, it's a dumb parallel because driving is not protected by the Constitution.
Well, also, I mean, you think about buying a car. I mean, they might show you a few of the bells and whistles on the car because you've never seen, you've never used a touch screen or with Bluetooth or whatever,
Right.
But what they're not supposed to do, much like the FFL isn't supposed to do, is take you through driver's ed before they let you have the car. Or, how long have you had your license? Have you taken a professional driving course? Do you have a garage that you will be storing the car in when you're not using it?
Have you
Those sorts of things.
Have you taken driver's ed, all that kind of stuff?
Right.
Now, I do remember one of the things that the person who was I'm going to say arguing. It wasn't like a flat out argument on that conversation you had, but I'm going to say arguing or debating, I guess would be a better word. The person who was debating this with you had said that they had their concealed carry permit for about a year, and right after they got their permit, they went in and bought their first gun, and then they didn't carry it for what did he say, a month or 2 months or 6 months or something. Didn't carry that gun for a long time after he bought it because he wanted to be proficient and things like that. Okay. And the detail, I might have the details messed up, but the point is, this person said, well, I had my concealed permit before I even bought my first gun. I went and bought my first gun. I didn't carry it right away because I knew that I needed to get comfortable with it, which is great and good for him or her. I think it was a him. So good for that person. But again, that's number one, personal choice, and number two, that's the way that responsibility works, right?
Well,
right. Because specifically what he was asking, what he expected the FFL to do, he said the shop could damn well see the issue date on my car. Not once did they ask if I had a safe, storage, etc. Not once did they ask if I'd done any training. So his point was that he didn't feel comfortable with that shop because they didn't go to a pretty long degree to say, I shouldn't sell you this gun yet because you haven't done X, Y, and Z to my satisfaction as an FFL.
Right. Now, I might have just gotten my carry permit as well, And I've had mine for a little over 2 years now, legally, to be able to carry concealed. But right after I got that permit, if I walked into a gun store to buy a gun, which I did, let's see, I got my permit, took my course in March, got my permit in April in the mail. In October, I went and bought a second pistol, which is when I bought my shield, and it's easier to conceal. And so when I bought my shield, I had to show my conceal permit, because in the state of Nebraska, that works as a purchase permit as well. That's proof that I've been through the background check. And so I was able to cash and carry a gun that day because I have my concealed permit. The state of Nebraska recognizes that. I don't have a 7-day wait or whatever it is because I've been through the background check already. They didn't have to run me CBCI was all I had to go through. And so they could see that I'd had that for about 6 months was all. And nobody said anything to me either. Do you have a safe? Do you know how to lock this up? Do you know how to not shoot yourself in the foot with this thing? Because it's not their responsibility. It's mine.
Yeah, completely.
Had somebody tried to have that conversation with me, depending on how they go about that conversation, that might cost them a sale. Because just because I'm a new concealed carrier doesn't make me a new shooter.
Well, and there's also there's plenty of courses out there that you can go into a gun store, buy a gun, and then drive to the course and learn how to conceal carry from an instructor.
I bought my first pistol before I had my concealed carry course.
Well, I mean that's exactly my point. Is instead of making it a law forcing somebody, just say, hey, in case you didn't know, there's classes out there that you can take. So we don't need to make it a law. You can voluntarily go and take this class on your own free will.
Well, and you know, that kind of brings up another point that it kind of ties in with this. It kind of doesn't. But this is another thought that I had as I was listening to the replay of Caliber Corner, as I was reading through everything else. You know, in the state of Nebraska, and I don't know how the rest of the states are. I know that where Gary lives and in Missouri and a few other states, you don't have any process to go through. You can just own a handgun and conceal it. You don't need a special permit to do that, which is cool for those states. I wish I lived in, or I don't wish I live in those states. I wish my state had that. But the fact of the matter is, the process to get a concealed permit in Nebraska is you have to go through the concealed carry course. You have to go through a requisite number of rounds in live fire training and proficiency to basically to qualify with your handgun, with a handgun. Then you take the certificate from the licensed instructor to the state patrol, along with your $100, your application for the permit. They'll fingerprint you. They'll collect all that stuff. And then I about a month later, your permit comes in the mail, pending the background check and all that. So the more I think about this, the more it really makes me upset that I am required to go through a course to get this permit. I have to go through a driving test to get a driver's license, but the state supplies the instructor. I have to go through another test to get a hazmat endorsement on my CDL, which I used to have. The state supplied that instructor in order to test me out on that stuff. So why is it that I had to spend an extra $120 on a private individual to teach me a course so that the state could charge me another $100 to get my permit? That's it's kind of a side note here, but I think it's kind of BS that the state's not supplying these courses if it's required. Why are we making this a money-making proposition for somebody? Why not require it to be free if nothing else? You can get a licensing by the state to give this course, but you can't charge for it. Again, it kind of sticks in my craw a little bit that my $100 permit cost me $225 to get. But again, that's the hoop I had to jump through to carry it concealed. But at the same time, there's no extra provisions with that. I don't have to keep my gun locked up a certain way at my house. I don't have to carry it a certain way. If I'm carrying it on my person, I don't have to go through and buy a specific kind of lock in my state. So So again, I mean, there's a couple things here that really are bugging me about the whole situation, and it's not that the conversation took place, because if one person thinks that there should be extra safety measures taken and another person doesn't think that, that's great. That's debate. That's why we're all here. But it scares me that there's so many people that think, well, we just as well opt into some of this stuff now because we're going to be required to later, instead of fighting it.
One thing I'll say about the whole trainer conversation that Jim had, it almost sounds like he's kind of promoting his own industry in order to promote his livelihood. That's kind of scary when the big trainers with the money start talking about, these extra requirements. Oh, it should be a state law, or don't you think it should be this, or don't you think it should be that? Well, yeah, you do the training, so of course you're going to want to push for it. Yeah, you'd love to make it a state law because that ensures your survival of your business. So I don't know. It just kind of.
What if he was coming out with a new line of gun safes the next week too, right?
Yeah, no doubt. It almost sounds like that's what he was kind of love to see that. Love to see a required class you got to take, or instruction. Yeah, your instructor, of course.
Look at it like this. When you're out in public and you're at the grocery store and you see people who have kids and they're letting these kids run all over the store, and these kids are getting underneath people's feet and they're getting in the way, and they're vandalizing the store, and they're out of control, and the parents are too busy looking at their phone or talking amongst each other or just letting the kids run off. Now, I don't raise my kids that way, but I can't stop and go, hey, get control of your kids. So how can somebody, say, hey, you need to keep your guns locked up? Just because I lock up mine at home doesn't mean that I want to hold you guys to that standard. You guys are grown men and women, okay? You can police up yourself. And I understand the whole take care of your own, clean up your own house, or somebody else is going to do it. But cleaning up our house is when you're in one of these chats and somebody's there saying, we've got to go and we've got to, do some evil, twisted things. And you're like, dude, no, that's not what we're about. Or keeping our house clean is when you're at the gun range with somebody and they're flagging everybody and you grab onto their barrel and burn your hand, I guess. But that's policing up but not saying, well, we better just bend over and take it because they're going to give it to us anyhow. No.
Well, and that's another thing that, another one of the points that I wanted to make tonight, Squib, is, speaking of people and their kids, which you don't have to have a permit, thank goodness, in this country to have kids. But at the same time, we've got people who are, your kids in school nowadays, they hand out condoms. They teach them all about using a condom. They teach them all about, STDs, or what's the new STI now they have to call it, or something.
Yeah.
At no point can we advocate teaching abstinence. The only way to guarantee you don't get a disease, the only way to guarantee you don't get pregnant, is to not have sex. But heaven forbid we want to teach our kids that. Okay, heaven forbid we want to pass legislation that says that killing a child is murder just because they haven't breathed air yet. Because, that brings in religion. Is it alive if it hasn't breathed air? Is it alive is it a human life if it still has a tail? Is it alive if it hasn't, if the cells haven't divided or whatever? That's, again, I want to have that conversation sometime when we have all night. This isn't the night. But the thing is, we've got so many people that are screaming, don't legislate my body. Stay out of my body. Stay out of my uterus. Stay the hell out of my gun safe.
Well, and I playing devil's advocate here a little bit. The guy isn't wrong that we should, at minimum, I should hold myself personally accountable to do safe things with my guns, and if they're not locked up in some sort of 800-pound Fort Knox safe, or they're secured in a locked cabinet or something, the law in Texas says you got to not let unattended children have access to your guns. Basically, it doesn't say how you have to do that. And so yeah, it's a no-brainer. Don't let my 6-year-old grandson run around with a loaded Glock, right? That's kind of a no. And obviously some minimum level of competence with firearms. You know, you don't have to be some sort of big time operator, but you should know how to shoot it straight. You should know how to take it apart and clean it. All of these things, you should know how to use the 4 safety rules. All of those things are good things, and I think that we should encourage that in our community. But when we start talking about we have to do this and we have to do this in some sort of uber defensive manner, so those who I call anti-gunners start coming after us harder, so we can kind of hold that at bay. For one, well, duh, we should be encouraging good behavior amongst ourselves, especially, me personally. And if I see someone doing something stupid at the range, I'm going to go, hey, you're doing something stupid at the range. But one of the things that took me aback was, and I said it in this conversation, was I don't think these guys who are going to keep proposing these new laws, these quote common sense regulations, are coming at us in good faith. I think we could pretty much have a spotlessly clean house from anybody's viewpoint, and they're still going to come at us with these. So there's that to consider too.
Well, and that's just it. And again, it goes back to if I see somebody doing something stupid, then it behooves me to call them out on it. But at the same time, if I'm selling guns as an FFL, which I'm not, but if situation was different and I had capital, I'd open a gun store tomorrow. Here in the town that I live, we've got one, and it's okay. But we need a nice, clean, well-lit gun store in our town that people can come and get good ammo, targets, all kinds of fun stuff. And I would love to be the person who could provide that. But at the same time, it wouldn't be my responsibility for everybody that comes in the door. That's why, again, I don't agree with it because it's not doing anything. But that's why we have a NICS check, right?
Well,
we need to make sure that they're not popping up on that they're a felon or that they've been adjudicated mentally incompetent or things like that. But the problem that we have is that's the requirement. If you haven't been adjudicated mentally incompetent, yeah, you might be an idiot, but that doesn't stop you from exercising your constitutional right. And the Second Amendment is the only right on the Bill of Rights that people have to get a permit for. You don't have to have a permit to stand in the middle of the town square and say whatever you want. You don't have to have a permit to print a newspaper.
Well,
you don't.
Yeah, if you want to have a gathering at certain places, you've got to file for a permit, so they know. Maybe they need police presence there, or whatever it is. But yeah, you kind of do for some of that stuff. I mean, I get what you're saying, and it's not like it's not something where they can deny you the permit. It's just it's kind of like that thing at Charlottesville. The people that were there had a permit to be there. The people that showed up to start the fight, they didn't.
But that was also a political event that they had a permit to do.
Right, but it was for a public gathering. I mean, I get what you're saying.
What I'm saying is, though, if you and I just agreed to meet on the courthouse steps, and we're not holding a rally, we're not protesting, we're not carrying signs, we're just sitting there talking. We don't have to have a permit to be on public property, and we don't have to have a permit to exercise our free speech rights, or to read the Bible, or not read the Bible. I mean, we don't have to have a permit to do that. I don't need a permit to say, no, soldiers can't stay at my house because we're not at war. I don't need a permit to say you can't force me to testify against myself. I don't need a permit for any of that. Why do I have to have a permit to carry my gun and to keep myself and my family safe? I know why people don't want guns. I get it. They've had a bad experience, or they know somebody whose life was taken away by somebody using a gun. And I don't want to make light of that. It's horrible. But the fact of the matter is, there's always going to be bad people. There's always going to be bad things happen. And we've seen time and again that criminals don't need a gun to kill people either. But look at how many people have lost their lives within the last 2 years, say, in public shootings. How many people lost their lives unnecessarily because nobody in the crowd was able to shoot back? I'm not saying that everybody should have a gun. Clearly, we all know somebody that we just as soon didn't. But the fact of the matter is, it goes back to that Minority Report. Until somebody commits a crime, they're not a criminal.
It also goes to the whole soft target thing. You don't even have to pull the gun and use it, or have 50 people pull a gun on one bad guy. Just the simple fact that it's public knowledge that there could be well-armed, well-trained people in that group. I think I'm going to go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, how come there was no shooting at SHOT Show? How come there's never been a shooting at the NRA convention? How come there's not been a shooting at any of these Pro 2A big conventions? There's never been a shooting at Wanamaker, right? Everybody was, well, not everybody, but a bunch of folks were just there. Gary was there. And did anybody start a shooting, Gary? Did it feel like a pretty safe place to be?
I did not encounter any shootings, and I was there for the entire time. I felt fairly safe. Yep.
And you didn't feel like there was anybody in there that was dumb enough to try it, did you?
No.
No, absolutely not. And yet, how many thousands of guns do you think were in that building at one time? It's just crazy how none of them shot somebody. Isn't it just crazy?
There's not a single gun to be found in a prison. There's not supposed to be any weapons at all in prisons, and prisons are one of the most dangerous places you can go to.
They should have a rule in prison where you can't have a weapon. You can't have a shank. They should outlaw shanks in prison.
That'd be a good idea.
And nobody'd ever get stabbed in prison, right? In fact, we should just pass a law that you can't shoot somebody. That would really, really cut down on shootings. Make it illegal.
You would think so.
Make crime illegal.
We should make crime illegal. I don't know why nobody's thought to do that.
Well, it'd just stop if we did.
I know. Well, here's the thing, though, is we need to make crime illegal, but at the same time, we need to punish the people that aren't committing them. Bad people are going to commit the crimes. We need to punish the people who aren't committing crimes. That's actually who needs the
while we do that, we need to let the bad people out of prison early, because they're not going to do it again.
Absolutely not. Why would they? It's illegal.
Let's instead, I got an idea. Let's fill up the prison with non-violent offenders that you could simply just write them a ticket that they'd pay and send them on their way. Let's just do it that way. The violent offenders don't have to feel like they're, being overpopulated or anything. Whatever. It's crazy how some of our system does work. This is still the greatest country on the earth. And I don't think we should lose sight of that. And it's great that we can have this conversation, and that we can try to petition our politicians to do what we want, what we elected them to do, even though they don't do that. We could be in a much worse condition. But yeah, it is. Recently I was talking with a really educated left-wing guy, and boy, I tell you what, I did not bring my A game to the gun conversation, but just some of the things that were said, it's like even the smart ones are, I don't know. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
A couple things to talk about here is, we talk about the training and this and that. I went and bought a brand new chainsaw back in May, and I had the guy at the counter did ask me if I needed help learning how to start it, how to run it, how to maintain it. Didn't need a license for it or a permit, minimum age. You do a lot of danger with it. You can do a lot of damage with a chainsaw,
Yeah, Leatherface would back you up on that one.
Not to mention the fact I can kill myself instantly with it if I nick an artery, So there was no training, and I was fine with it because I taught myself how to use it. I had prior practice, but if I would have been new, I found some YouTube videos and read the manual and stuff, and when nothing happened, I was good. But hey, you're talking about punishing people, then let's go punish the good people when they try to defend themselves against the bad people.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they do in England and Australia and all these other places where you can't even defend yourself with anything because then you're going to go to prison for doing it.
Think
Canada.
about all the times you've gone to the gun range and you've seen that new shooter out there. They come walking up, their AR-15 still in the cardboard box that says Palmetto State Armory. They don't even have a case for it yet. I mean, the box is legally a case, right? And they're having trouble loading it, and they're having trouble holding it, and they don't know how to work this, and they don't know how to work that. They don't know the rules because they've never been to this gun range. They just know that this is the local gun range or whatever. You'll see the range safety officers try to give them some pointers. They'll remind them, sir, don't step over the yellow line. We're doing a target check or whatever it is. And if they're having a problem, they're frustrated. Usually the person to the left or to the right will say, can I help you? Or if they need to borrow a tool or whatever it is. And then maybe you start a conversation and then they come over to your station and shoot your gun and they go, wow, this is pretty cool. I've never shot anything like I'm new to the, and you start talking to them. It's like, have you ever heard of gun channels? And the list just goes on and on. At least at my range, most of the people there are friendly. The range safety officers don't start yelling at people until they break the rule for like the fifth time. There's a community there, and although you will have that one person that is just the anchor on the whole place, and you're going to have a couple people that show up once or twice a year to sight in their hunting rifle and nothing more, and they are some of the rudest people, but you don't see them the other 11 months out of the year, so whatever. It's still a family friendly place, and I see new shooters there every weekend I go, and I have never seen anybody refuse to teach them something. Now, I have had some people give some bad advice. I have had some people say, oh, well, you don't want to do this because of XYZ. And I'm going, oh, my goodness, they've read too much crap on the internet. But they mean well. But I haven't seen anybody give anybody some sort of unsafe advice or, I mean, there's so much out there on our side. I think that we are better people than the media portrays us, than these left wingers who don't want to learn anything about guns or gun laws or history or any of that. The way they portray us, I think we are policing our own home and our own house. And I don't think that, I mean, not everybody in the community is like that, but I see enough of it. And I know I'm not the only one.
And I've only ever been to a public range once in my life. So, I mean, I can't speak for how that works because the one that I was at, I was a guest of a member of that range. It was indoors. There was no RO, but our host was also a licensed NRA instructor, and she was teaching my wife some stuff. And for the first time, well, not the first time, but one of the few times in my life, I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut and just listen. And so I just stepped back and let the lady that knows how to teach my wife some stuff about shooting pistols. So I didn't really see anybody goof up because they were all members. And I think they'd all been vetted, and I don't think they had a range officer standing around. Of course, there were cameras, but they didn't have somebody standing there making sure that everybody, did the right stuff because they kind of expected, again, people to know what they were doing. But I get what you're saying, Squib, that, as a rule, I think we're a pretty good cross section. Just the folks in here in this panel of gun owners and shooters in general. We all have our opinions, and we all have, the advice that we give to people. But none of us insist that our way is the only way. And very few people on a gun range are going to say, well, my way is the only way. In fact, if anybody ever does say their way is the only right way, then that's probably not somebody you should listen to. But at the same time, I think that everybody's going to be kind of friendly. And for the most part, other gun owners are just like the rest of us. They want to get to know more like-minded individuals too. And they might have something that you've never seen before and let you shoot it. And you might have a shotgun or a rifle or a pistol that they've always wanted to try. And you can, hand that over and let them shoot it. And it's fun to get together with other shooters, other gun owners. Anytime I've ever done that, I've gotten to shoot something that I hadn't shot before, even if it was just a different version of a 12 gauge shotgun or a different version of a pistol. I mean, I shot one that I hadn't shot before, and I think it's just fun. So yeah, anytime you go to a range, if you're doing something unsafe, then we're going to jump all over you for it, which is the way it should be. If I do something unsafe, I need to be called out on it right away and stopped right away. but at the same time, for the most part, we all want people to keep coming back, and we all want to make sure that people have a good experience at the range, don't we? One thing, and you guys know how this works, I often can't listen to what's being said if I'm reading or typing in the chat. So a lot of the stuff, the chat goes past me, and I missed it. But I did see here, Jim, a comment that you had put over on the YouTube side about not understanding why, if you've got a carry permit, you can't carry in a gun show. I do want to address that because I think I have a general idea, and it's mostly because if you walk into most gun shops, there's usually a sign, or it's just understood. And if you've never seen this sign, gun shops don't mind if you're carrying concealed. What they mind is if you draw. Don't ever draw your carry gun in a gun shop because it's loaded. It's not the time to take it out of its holster, even if you want to shop for holsters or things like that. Don't wear a loaded gun into a gun shop and then draw it. That's bad. Okay.
Absolutely.
So for safety's sake, don't pull one out. Don't hand a loaded weapon over the counter to somebody. Don't show it off. If you want to trade that gun, unload it, clear it, put a chamber flag in it, lock it in a case, and carry it in the case. Okay. Now, in a gun show, there are a lot more attendees than exhibitors typically. And in a gun shop, you can usually kind of see what's going on for the most part and keep everybody kind of under supervision. At a gun show, you can't. If it's busy, it's, bum to belly button in there. And you can't be watching what everybody's doing. And you don't want somebody to pull their gun out and then try a gun and see if it fits their holster, or show it off to you, or show it off to Billy Jim Bob, who was looking for one and you want to sell it. So just for safety's sake, that is why they won't allow people to carry at the gun show, just because they don't want anybody forgetting where they are, what they're doing. And it is a little bit of a deterrent of the dum-dum incident.
You can still carry here at a gun show.
What about
they don't have that problem. If you're there to show off your gun or sell your gun or something like that, that's in a case.
Right.
Your concealed carry is your concealed carry. That don't come out unless you've got to defend your life.
That's the thing. It needs to stay in its holster. Now, most of the gun shows that I've been to in the state of Nebraska, I don't think it's a state law, but most of the gun shows just have a sign posted, no loaded firearms in the building. And that's okay. So I just usually lock mine in the vehicle. I don't even worry about carrying it in unloaded or anything. At Wanamaker, they will give you a chance to carry up to the door. You can check your ammo. They'll zip tie your gun. You can put it back in your holster. It won't fit quite right, but they don't mind you carrying your gun. They just want to make sure that nobody's walking around with a loaded gun. And again, there's so many people, and it's so easy to forget what you're doing. And I understand why with that many people. Plus, it's a way to shut up the naysayers. And it's a good way to say, look how safe we are. Look, again, we're policing our own. We are making sure that nothing bad happens, that no accidents are possible because we don't have any firearms inside this building that are loaded.
Yeah.
Except for the law enforcement, but
yeah, well, that's different. They're on duty.
I know.
I get that, and I don't. And there's a couple of reasons why. One, me personally, I know damn good and well, and I can't speak for Joe Dum Dum over there, who is, gonna pull out his Glock and wave it around and say, "Look how cool I am." That can always happen, right? But I know for myself, I know, if I'm carrying a loaded weapon on my hip, it ain't coming out unless I feel like me or my wife is about to die. So right. There's that. And the other thing is, and I was talking about anti-gunners acting in good faith earlier. I've actually heard these people say, look, they don't even like you, NRA show or gun shows, they don't even like you carrying in there. Why should we accept it? So there's that angle.
Sure.
And
Now-
then the whole the checking your magazine. So at the entry to Wanamaker, you're gonna pull out your pistol. You're gonna drop your mag. You're gonna clear it. You're gonna put that one round back in the mag, hand them the mag, and run a zip tie through your gun. How many opportunities are there just for some inadvertent 1 in a million thing to go wrong right there?
And I wasn't watching at Wanamaker because I didn't carry in there. I didn't have to check my ammo. I don't know if they're leaving it up to each individual person to clear the gun, or if they're letting security clear it for you. They might have had a clearing bucket or something, that they were pointing it into as they cleared it. I don't know. I wasn't watching because I went through a different spot.
I think they had the sheriffs posted at that point, and you'd walk up and they would clear it for you, if I'm not mistaken.
It was the yellow shirts that were doing the clearing, right?
Yeah.
So
if you're bringing in a gun to sell and you're bringing it in a case and they want to examine it and they want you to clear it in a clearing bucket, because people bring in lots of air quotes unloaded guns in cases and they're loaded, and they want to put a zip tie through it because you're taking it into the show to sell it or trade it or something like that. I get that. I've seen that before. Your concealed carry's on your body, and they're not going to know unless you tell them, or they've got a metal detector. What you're saying, I get what you're saying as far as from the safety standpoint and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what you're saying almost quantifies this trainer's statement.
Well, okay, now, before we get too far, I hadn't thought about this angle, but Digital Profit 4D83 has set out there, the reason you can't carry the gun show is for insurance purposes. Hadn't thought about that, but that also makes complete sense to me, that you might not get insurance for your event if you're allowing people to carry loaded firearms. So, or maybe you have to pay a lot more to insure your events. So that makes sense too.
What about theft?
Maybe if you're in a state that doesn't allow stuff like, I mean, they're more restricted on concealed carry. I mean, I got to imagine like a constitutional carry state, you can carry anywhere, right? Except maybe a courthouse or something, or an airport. So
yeah, I don't know. It's still, and also it depends on state by state. It's posted at the door at the gun shows in Nebraska. No concealed firearms, no loaded firearms. You have to abide by it. There's no official sign or no official position of a sign in the state of Nebraska. If it's posted, it's posted. As long as it's visible from the outside of the door, it's posted. So I mean that is what it is, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Squib. Again, you and I feel the same way and agree a lot on stuff, but I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying it's the way it is.
No, I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just saying that be careful, because the territory you're going into trying to justify it is along the same lines or similar to you're justifying it from their standpoint, from the organizers or from the.
I'm explaining how they justify it or how they might be justifying it.
And along the same lines,
I'd be okay with allowing concealed carriers to concealed carry. I'd be okay with don't ask, don't tell.
Well, I didn't necessarily mean that you agreed with it. I just mean that
from concealment, then they should be boosted too. I mean, there's no call for that unless you intend on using that gun. It better not come out of its holster.
Yeah, but that's already a state law anyhow.
Usually, but yeah, I'd be okay with that at gun shows too. I'm okay with the idea. If the state says that you're good to carry, I think you should be able to carry it anywhere.
But
that's how schools and banks and everywhere else too. But that's not how it really is, and there's reasons why, and whether
but those reasons involve perceived safety because of a few bad apples out there that don't represent us.
Yes.
Well, having to train somebody before they can buy a gun at a gun store because there's a few bad apples out there that don't represent us, or requiring somebody to have their gun locked up at home because there's a few bad apples. It's along the same lines. That's all I'm saying. I wasn't trying to say that you agreed with it, but I'm saying it was along the same lines.
Sure. No, and I see where you're coming from. I just don't want anybody to think that I myself am trying to justify the reason that we have to have some of these rules. I think, again, I don't think that we should have to have them, but the fact of the matter is, again, we've had some people screw stuff up, and we've had some people that are just too scared to allow it. And maybe the venue requires it. Maybe the venue is owned by anti-gunners, and we're just happy that they let us have a gun show there. I don't know. But yeah, no. Ultimately, my own personal belief is if the state says you're okay to carry concealed, you should be able to carry concealed anywhere within that state. Any building. I think that if the state says I can concealed carry, then I should be able to concealed carry in the state capitol, in a courthouse, anywhere. I haven't committed a crime. And until I do, I can't be punished for a crime. And I have no intention of committing a crime with my firearm.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. You know me, my delivery is not exactly the best. So I kept trying to fix it so that I get my point across. I wasn't really too worried about insulting you, because we can always deal with that later. It was more about saying it and it meaning what I'm trying to get it to mean. And sometimes that happens on the internet.
No, I get you. And you know what? Here's the thing, Squib, is the more chats I do with you, the more I think I understand what you're trying to say. I'm just trying to help you get it out.
Well, you can be my translator.
I've learned to speak a little squib, a little squibbish. So I'm learning. I'm a student of the squibbish. So no, I see what you're saying, and I get that, and I don't think you're wrong. But again, I mean, for anybody out there listening, we've got some stuff going out there in the chat that some people are making good points out there, and I can't follow them all. Double A has thrown out 2 super chats tonight, so thank you very much for the generosity. That's always appreciated. Thank you for the support, Double A. Yeah, and Vanessa is saying many places you can't even have a weapon in your vehicle, let alone on your person, and that's kind of how it is in my state. But like my wife doesn't have a concealed carry permit, so we can't leave a gun in the glove box of the vehicle, because if I'm in well, either way, if there's a gun in the glove box and anybody but me is in the vehicle, then we're illegal. That person is in violation of a concealed weapon, and they might know it. I might have a gun in my glove box of my vehicle that maybe my wife never gets in it, or maybe I took it off and I locked it in the glove box to walk into the bank or something, forgot about it, didn't put it back on when I went back to work or went home or what have you, and maybe somebody else jumps in my vehicle and I give them a ride. If I were to get pulled over, that person in the passenger seat would be guilty of concealed weapon without a permit. I don't know I think it's a misdemeanor. I don't know what kind of fine that entails, but that's actually on them, and they had no idea. And I think it's a dumb law. I wish it would change in Nebraska.
It might depend on the cop, though. They might come back at the gun owner and cite you for, because it was your...
I'm not the one in violation. I've got a concealed carry permit.
No, I'm saying, but you're the one that left the weapon concealed last. You left the weapon concealed when that person is in control of your vehicle. So like you get pulled over, you're like, well, I had no idea that gun was in there. I'm just driving this car. You didn't tell me that was in there.
Well, even if I'm driving the car, is what I'm saying. I might be in there. Yeah. But
if the wife drives a car and there's a gun in the glove box, they might come at you as the original gun owner because you were the one that left it unattended. They might cite you for it and not the driver, because the driver didn't know.
I don't think that's the case, though, Travis. I think that the way that I got it explained when I took my concealed carry course is if we leave one in the glove box, and which I do sometimes, I lock it in the glove box when we go in someplace. And if I don't pull that out and put it back on my person, when we both get back in the car, she's the one that's violating the law, not me, because I have a concealed carry permit. If everybody in the car has a concealed carry permit, then no law is being broken.
So if they don't, then every person in that car is guilty of having a concealed weapon.
Every person who doesn't have a concealed carry permit is guilty of a concealed weapon.
Like our stupid zero tolerance policy with alcohol with kids. You get a ride home. I had no idea you got a 6-pack in the back. You get pulled over. We both get MIP, even though you didn't tell me there was alcohol in the trunk. I think it is the dumbest thing in the world.
But the way I'm understanding this is because the gun is in the glove box. If you had it in a holster tucked underneath your shirt, then nobody would be in trouble, right?
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's on my person. Also, open carry is legal in Nebraska. So I've got a vehicle holster that, if I don't leave it in there out in the open in plain sight when I walk away from the car. But if we're in my Tahoe and I want to drive down the road and have that gun sitting in the vehicle holster where the butt is exposed and it's not covered up by anything, it's not concealed then. If any part is exposed, it's not concealed. And so then it's okay. Like my wife, if the gun's in the vehicle holster, my wife can drive the vehicle and not be in violation of any laws because it's open carry. It's no different than having a rifle in a rifle rack in the back window of a pickup. That's open carry too. But if I put it in the glove box or in the center console, she jumps in it and drives away, then she's the one in violation. Or if we both jump in it and drive away, and I didn't put it in either holster, or it's not out, on the seat, on the dash, that's dumb. It's not secure. But you know what I'm saying? If it's not visible in the state of Nebraska, it's concealed.
I think I like Texas law better because, well, for one, my wife is licensed, but so it wouldn't matter in your circumstance. But in Texas, and it's not been that long since they finally fixed this. They used to have some sort of travel law where if you were going more than so many miles or crossing county lines where you're actually on a road trip, you could carry a weapon in your car. But now it's just if you are taking a firearm with no licensing, if you take a firearm from your house to your car, house or place of business, to your car, drive around in your car, that car becomes an extension of your homestead.
Yes, and I've heard Never Enough Ammo explain that same thing, and I wish it was like that. Missouri was the same way. Here a month or two ago, we were in Missouri, and of course they're a constitutional carry state. I think they were one of the first. But in the state of Missouri, if it's in a glove box, it's still okay. You don't have to have a permit to carry it concealed in a glove box. Although in the state of Missouri, if you're a resident, you don't have to have a permit to carry it under your shirt either. But I just wish that more states were like that, where the vehicle was considered part of your home, and that the same laws apply. If in your house in Texas, you're not required to keep your guns locked up in a safe. I mean, common sense dictates that if you've got little fingers, then yeah, you should. But it's not a requirement, and it shouldn't be a requirement. It should be, common sense. It shouldn't have. We shouldn't have to legislate what should be common sense. I don't think that common sense is. It's relative. What I think is makes common sense, you might not, and I don't think that I should force my views of common sense on you. Therefore, common sense laws, I think, are BS.
Well, there's different notions of common sense. There's different situations. Some people have no kids and they live out in the middle of 100 yard or 100 acres of nothing.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. We don't have kids in our house, and I have a gun safe. It's a pistol safe, but right now there's some ammo in it, but there's no pistols in it because we don't have little fingers in here.
Right.
But and going back to the responsibility topic, if anybody breaks into my house and steals my handgun when I'm not home and then goes and uses that gun to commit a crime, that person is a criminal, and that person is responsible for committing that crime. I'm not responsible.
You're actually a victim.
I'm a victim, but yet there's going to be people that say if that was locked up, they couldn't have got away with it. It's your fault because you left your gun laying out. Really, it's my fault that some idiot broke through my door or my window and stole my personal property, and somehow you want to blame me.
Right. As far as I'm concerned, it's locked up because the house is locked. From that viewpoint.
Even if it's not, if the door isn't locked, it's locked up because it's my house, not theirs.
Right.
Although
I actually think.
Well, okay.
I actually think the law and the new law in Washington is kind of like that. If they manage to steal your gun, you're responsible for what happens with it.
Which sounds to me like a scare tactic more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, because anybody can get into a safe with the right tools if you're not around for a couple hours. What are you supposed to do?
Or in the case of my safe,
bat cave or what?
my safe's not attached to anything, and it's not heavy. It's a pistol safe.
Yeah.
You could take the thing, carry it out under your arm, and then go take it to wherever and use whatever tool you need to to bust into it. Now, Liberty is advertising that this thing takes, an act of Congress and a couple earthquakes or something to break into it. But at the same time, where there's a will, there's a way.
And if you can take the whole thing, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
That's
exactly.
more of a property issue than a weapon issue. So in the state of Washington, if somebody steals your gun and commits a crime with it, you're held responsible. Is that what you were saying?
That's what Yankee was saying.
Okay. So in the same state, if somebody steals your car and runs somebody over, are you responsible?
Very unlikely. Not bloody likely.
I don't like comparing cars to guns, but this isn't a weapon versus vehicle comparison. This is property versus property. You see what I mean?
Yep.
You could take this to the nth degree, and the way they're justifying is that they're saying it's a dangerous weapon, but really it's about it being a piece of property. If you're going to be held responsible for it, it's not because of what it is, it's the fact that it belongs to you. Hence, it's property. So in the same regard, they need to have a law that says if somebody steals your vehicle and causes any harm, you're responsible. If somebody,
come on, now you're asking people to be consistent.
Yeah, I know.
We shouldn't expect that. Well, and if we're going to do that, then it has to apply 100% across the board. So if I break into your tool shed and I steal a hedge trimmer or a hammer or, a chainsaw, and I use that to commit a crime, a blowtorch. If I use your blowtorch to burn down a house or a building, and I commit arson, then that makes you responsible for that arson, right?
Right. And then that's the whole point I was going at. But when somebody goes, well, then why don't you need a license to have a gun when you need a license to drive? Because a gun is a constitutional right, and driving a vehicle is a state-given privilege difference. So that's why I'm comparing property to property, and I can also, that's apples to apples. But I can do apples to oranges with constitutional right versus state-given privilege. You see what I mean?
And we could probably exhaust this topic, and maybe we have in the past and already. But if we're gonna talk like this, and again, we've got the people that saying, well, if one child's life is saved, it's worth it, right? If one child's life is saved by trampling on your rights, then it's worth it, right? Now, again, you guys all know, and if anybody who's listening to this, if you don't know by now, I am 100% against anybody losing their life, especially children, especially unborn children. I don't want to see anybody lose their life, okay? That's not what I'm saying. It's terrible, it's tragic, and I hate to hear about it when it happens. I hate the fact that this happens in our world. But if we're going to go as far as saying if one child's life is saved, then it's worth it, then guns aren't even the issue. We need to talk about cell phones and driving distracted.
Yep.
We need to take the radios out of cars. That fancy touchscreen GPS and all that needs to come out of automobiles because it takes your eyes off the road. We need to take alcohol back out of the country again and make that illegal, because that worked really well, didn't it, back in the 20s? We need to
get rid of that pool in your backyard.
You better get rid of that pool in your backyard. You better get rid of automobiles altogether. Or like I've said before, we need to make them to where they only drive 30 miles an hour.
And what hurts us with that argument is there aren't FBI statistics about how many lives were saved by using a firearm. Not even actually having to pull the trigger, just having it there, brandishing it, the threat alone, let alone actually having to use it, which is the last thing any of us want to do. But there are no real statistics because they don't want to report any of that. They'll just report how many people died because somebody...
But the statistics are skewed because most citizens don't want to report that they brandished their weapon and thwarted a crime because they're afraid they'll get charged with brandishing.
That'll happen here in Michigan, unfortunately. But they tell you, call, because whoever calls first is right. The other guy could come at you with a gun. You could pull your gun out and, maybe his gun's empty, whatever it is, and he runs away. He ditches the gun in a dumpster, calls the police first. And you're the guy with concealed carry permit, and they found a gun on you. They didn't find a gun on him. He's right and you're wrong. It's a BS state law. I don't like it, but that's the way they do it here.
Well, it's just like I've heard. Speaking of great instructors, and I'll name this one because you can go look this up on YouTube and other places. But Clint Smith. If anybody doesn't know who Clint Smith is from Thunder Ranch, you need to go check this dude out because he's got some great wisdom. And it's entertaining. Clint is hilarious. And if I ever get rich, I'm going to go to Oregon and take his class and shake that man's hand and sponge as much as I can. But one of the things that he tells his students, if you are involved in a shooting, even if you terminate that person's life, they're laying there bleeding out dead on the ground, you call the police, and when the police show up, you insist that they cuff that person. Even if they say that person is dead, that person attacked me, and I want to press charges, and I want them arrested. I want you to cuff them. Because, again, that just starts the whole process. Just like Squibb said, whoever calls first is the right one, and whoever doesn't call first is the guilty party. Whoever's wearing stainless steel bracelets is the guilty party, right? Even if it's, considered a DOA or whatever, that person laying on the ground that attacked you and you drew your weapon and defended yourself, put the cuffs on them and read them their rights and book them, because that person attacked me. That's the criminal. And that's your first step in your defense. So I see what you're saying, Squibb. That's why I told that story is I understand where you're coming from with that. Makes a lot of sense.
So I can see why some of the numbers would be skewed, but everything needs to be two sides of the coin. We obviously aren't going to outlaw vehicles because you need them as a day-to-day thing. Well, guns are a day-to-day thing too. It's just not for every family. Every family's got a car or 2 or 10. Not every family has a gun. But the people that have them and use them responsibly, they have saved their lives with them. And I mean, nobody ever wants to, just like nobody ever wants to get in a car accident, right? I mean, so it's just it's an argument that we really don't get past the anti-gunners too well, because we don't have those hard statistics because of things like not wanting to report because you're afraid you get in trouble or whatever.
And here's what's crazy, and you guys have heard me say this before, and I don't know if it's been on this chat or on somebody else's, if it's been on my channel or not, but I bet there's nobody in this panel who hasn't at some point in their life been in some sort of a car accident, right? Minor, major, whatever. Has anybody not been in a car accident yet? Okay, now, and again, I don't want to make light of anything, and I don't know if Tack Daddy is going to catch this later, because I know that his answer is going to be different to this next question. But how many people in this channel have either been shot or know someone who's been shot in a crime? I'm not talking about war. I'm not even talking about hunting accident, but who's been shot by a criminal?
I've never been shot, but I know a whole bunch of people who've been shot.
Okay. Anybody else, though?
I mean, there's one person on gun channels who's told a story about it, and somebody at work recently had a friend get shot by another friend. But I mean, I don't think I would count those.
So what? The reason I'm asking that, do patients count? No, Ashley, they don't. The reason I'm saying that is we all obviously can understand that cars are dangerous. We all know somebody who's been in an accident. Probably we all know somebody who's lost their life to an automobile accident. And I think we've all been in a car accident of some sort. I don't know anybody who's been shot. And I know a lot of people do, and that's not what I'm saying. Obviously it happens. But just taking a cross-section of this panel right here, there's been a lot more people involved in car accidents than involved in shootings, or know someone who's been involved in shootings. And so my point is that anytime anybody loses their life, it doesn't matter what happens, it's horrible. But again, if we're going to stand on a platform of safety, do it for the kids, do it for the public health, whatever, then there are a lot of things we need to look at before we get to guns, because there are a lot of things that are more dangerous, statistically speaking, anecdotally speaking, than guns. It's just that guns are an easy target. And the fact of the matter is, it's not practical to outlaw cars because this country survives on cars. I know there's some people in bigger towns that, you know, can get away with public transit, whatnot, but for the most part, you can't live very, very well in Nebraska. You can't live very well in Kansas, in Texas, with or Michigan, without a car. And David, I'm sure that there's places where you live that you could probably, you know, get away without a car, but for the most part, not, right?
Yeah, the further west you go, you could probably get away with it, but from Frederick, Howard County, and Carroll County east, if you don't have a car, then you're pretty much homeless, I would say.
Well, you can ride a horse, I suppose, but
Right, yeah.
don't know where you're going to tie it up at the mall. But
Speaking of Nebraska,
yeah, there you go.
but that's really what I'm saying is we've got a lot of things, you know, automobiles, drinking and driving, distracted driving, just people thinking they're bulletproof and driving too fast,
Overdosing on drugs.
opiates, right? Huge problem right now in this country. And yet we've got people who want to ignore all that and say we need to ban high-capacity magazines and rifles that have a foregrip, you know, vertical foregrip and a collapsible stock, because that's the bad issue. That's the problem.
When I'm having a conversation with an anti-gunner and they say, I don't know anything about guns, and I don't want to learn anything, but I just know this: they all need to be registered. And it was like, okay, do you realize you just defeated your statement, your whole argument with your opening statement? You know, people understand cars to the extent of they know they have to get a license, they know they have to get insurance, they know they have to renew every year, they know that, then they know put gas in, push pedal to floor, it goes. Not everybody knows how to fix an engine or do a brake job or what some of the things mean. They just know, you know, push pedal, car, go. People don't even want to learn, you know, pull trigger, bullet come out on guns. They just want to believe what they see in the movies and all these myths that are out there. And it's unfortunate. I don't want to get somebody who's uncomfortable around guns or who just has this predisposition to hate them and all this other stuff. I'm not trying to convert anybody into being a gun guy or gun gal. All I want them to do is walk away, and they don't need a plethora of knowledge. I just want them to walk away with some knowledge to understand that I'm not the person they have to worry about. You guys aren't the people they have to worry about. And some of these myths and some of these things that they think about guns are not true.
Yeah, and the problem is if you're having that conversation with a real anti-gunner, it's probably going nowhere because you're no more going to convince them of anything than they are convince you of anything. Even though you've got logic and facts on your side, they don't care.
They've got guilt on their side.
They've got guilt.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, you know, they want to be compassionate, caring people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Junior on the network news was killed with a gun for whatever, however, whenever, and, you know, whatever situation you want to talk about. And since they're so compassionate and they're so understanding and loving, get rid of the gun. And when you fight them against that, you're not fighting about the gun, you're fighting about their moral quality.
Well,
that's what most of the
how many times
SJWs and politics today, identity politics, are about. It's about you're hurting my feelings.
Mm-hmm. And it comes down to virtue signaling.
There you go.
I had somebody tell me that I need to vote for a law that I don't agree with because this law isn't good for my family and myself, because I need to vote. I don't need to vote for what I believe in or what would hurt my family. I need to vote for the greater good. It's like, okay, really? That's real hypocritical.
Well, the bad thing is, like, I don't know if everybody saw my red flag video yet, but
yeah, I did.
But I got about half of it done.
The chief, one of the quotes in there is from the chief of police of the Anne Arundel County Police Department, and he says that the red flag laws are a good idea and they're working. Now, this is right after one of his officers had to kill somebody.
How many?
So we can't all we also have to understand that just because we think that people are on our side, they're not. The
But how many
police,
times have you heard about somebody who says they're scared of guns, they don't want a gun in their house, they don't have nothing to do with guns, and then something happens? Somebody breaks into their house, they get mugged, they get raped, something awful happens. Next thing you know, they're going to buy their very first gun and they're going to take training on how to use this gun.
Hmm.
And you
well,
don't want that bad thing to happen to that person so that they change their opinion on why you should be able to defend yourself. But when you're trying to explain why you are proactive and are ready to defend yourself, hoping this never happens, but if it does, you're ready. They don't get it. They have to have something terrible happen to them or one of their loved ones for them to go, I want the same thing you've got. It's
Yes.
awful that it's got to come to that.
well, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see it a lot, and I'm sure everybody on the panel and in the chat has already seen it. The mother from the guy who was shot and injured in Vegas and then died in this last shooting. That quote is going to be all over every newspaper. The closer we get to 2020, you're going to see that woman all day, every day, and her saying, "I want the guns. I don't want your prayers." So
Yeah.
just be ready for that because it's coming.
Now the thing is, at least she calls a spade a spade. She's saying all guns. She's not saying I want to get rid of, just certain guns, just scary guns. She's saying unilaterally across the board, get rid of all of them.
That's what they're all
If
saying.
that's what they want. It's refreshing that somebody actually, and partly because she's a mom, she's grieving, she's not a politician. She's saying exactly what they all want, but she's not. She has no agenda to polish it up. She's coming at it from raw emotion.
Yeah,
My
and
heart,
I'm
my
not
heart,
taking away from
I don't know what
her
that.
heartfelt feelings. I'm just saying
No,
that's
that's
going to be all over politics.
you're right. It is, but it at the very least, at least she's saying the truth. They're not saying, well, we only want to take away some of these, when really they do want all of these. Clearly, because every time we've given away some of these, they've kept coming, right? So we know that. But what I'm saying is, this is coming from somebody who's not in politics or in media, who is saying, I want to get rid of all of them, and I don't want to make light of that lady's feelings. I can't wrap my head around what that must feel like for her. And I can't tell her she's wrong. I can't. I could never look her in the eye and say, ma'am, I don't care that
That's okay, Sandhills. I'll do it. I don't have any feelings.
The thing is, there was
no, but I would start out the conversation with, "Lady, I got kids too."
But
So-
what I'm saying is, what she's proposing, there's no way to accomplish, not feasibly. And I have these weird thoughts that kind of run through my head at time to time. Usually when I'm listening to some other chat, and the way that my brain works is I go off on a tangent and I think about this and it reminds me of that. So I've kind of got a little bit of an idea for a video I'm gonna make here probably yet this week. But it's gonna be about the concept of the only way to guarantee that bad things don't happen with guns is to get rid of every one of them, right? And there's no way to do that in this country. And even if there was a way to do that, law isn't going to do it. It's literally brute force, comb every square inch of the country and take every one of them, because that's the only way to make sure that we eliminate all guns, right? If we just say it's illegal to have them, then there's going to be a lot of illegal guns in the country. We already have established this. Excuse me, hold on. But when I think about, trying to take away all the guns, especially of the people who haven't done anything wrong with them, I think about people like Dragon Man out in Colorado. I sure don't want to be the one to knock on his door and tell him I'm taking all those. I don't know who in their right mind would go to that guy's house and confiscate them.
The police are going to do that. That's what they're doing here in Maryland. Those were police officers going to this man's house to confiscate his weapons.
Sure.
That's what
What I'm saying is that's only going to work for if they have enough manpower to hit every house at once.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, it's the slow, steady drip.
Out, everybody else is going to dig in. And I am not willing to be the one to start going to houses to say, hey, give them over.
And the flip side of that is, let's just say they were able to do it. Let's just say they took them all. There wasn't one left. And then you started having the more crime statistics come up where more people are getting mugged, more people are getting killed, more people are getting raped, more things are happening. And then somebody will get on the news and go, if they only had some way to defend themselves, if only these weaker people, these helpless people, these outnumbered people, and it'd be like, yeah, we had that. You just took it.
Mandatory whistles.
Worse yet, the muggings would go up, the things like that.
Oh, absolutely. And who would still have guns? Who would still have guns?
Well, nobody. Let's say that.
What, they're going to get them from the bad guys? Come on.
No, well, hold on. We know that's dumb, but let's just say hypothetically, okay? Hypothetically, every gun in the country's gone, right? You can't have guns. The muggers are going to start using a knife to hold people up, and pretty soon we're going to see capitals of countries banning knives.
You mean like England?
Like England? Yeah.
And don't, crap, because it's happening.
You know what'll happen is when the innocent people are complaining, we need to do something to defend ourselves. Well, then, they'll say, well, gun crime is up now because, the good populace has been disarmed. And then they'll go after guns even more because, well, we got to go after the guns that are going after the good people, and then there won't be anything left.
Travis, you better hold tight to that chainsaw.
If you look at it, too, from like the leftist logic, as I like to say, misogyny and the patriarchy is this big deal, and male dominance and testosterone is this big problem. Well, if you take all the guns away, and you take all the knives away, and you take all the bats away, who's still going to be the baddest guy on the block? The guy with the most testosterone and the biggest fist. So that's totally going against what they want, because the biggest, baddest guy is still going to be in control.
Well,
right, you got rid of the great equalizer.
It goes back to the conversation we just had about prisons. Let's say that even if there were no shanks in a prison, and there's no guns in a prison, there's no cars in a prison, people still get murdered. People get killed with bare hands in a prison. Number one, it's because we've got bad people in prison. I get that. But again, which guy in the yard is which guy runs that yard? The great big, dude that's got muscles on his muscles, right? I mean, that's the guy that you want to make your friend. Does anybody have Sarge's email? I don't think I have Sarge's email. Can somebody shoot him a link? We're about to wrap this up, but we'll let Sarge get in.
Let me see if I can forward it.
Otherwise, hey, Sarge, if you're listening to this, log in on Gun Channels, because I did post the link up on the chat in Gun Channels. So you can just grab it from there, too. Which, I really haven't gone through the chat, and welcome to everybody, but I've got Jim and Gary over on the Gun Channel side, and that's about it. And a lot of stuff's going on over in the YouTube chat.
I was having a hard time finding your page on Gun Channels.
Just go to, go to the main Gun Channels page. I did post the chat over there. You should be able to get the link there and then get to the chat from my link. The link that lets you watch it, Otherwise, if anybody can send that to Sarge, send that over too. That would be awesome. Thank you.
I forwarded it to him. I'm going to double check to make sure it went through.
Okay. Oh, Sarge is in the house. All right. Hey, we're about to wrap this up, but looks like you've been out there for a little bit, Sarge, and might have a couple things to say. So we will give you the floor real quick.
Oh no, I was just wanting to. I didn't know how long you're going to run. I was just. I heard someone talk about the Maryland incident and whatnot. I was reading a little bit about that. I guess there was some sort of situation where they were ordered to go take that gentleman's guns, and it went south from there.
Yeah, what happened was it's it's a little sketchy on how exactly accurate all the reporting is, because the red flag laws are all confidential information. But I'd assume that a reporter got a hold of one of the family members. There was a fight at the house on Sunday night, and the sister of Mr. Willis was his name. The sister of Mr. Willis called and filed this report that, he was a danger, he needed a red flag law done. And November 5th at 5:17 in the morning, they showed up at his house.
What type of paperwork did they have?
They had just the warrant that says, here we are to take your firearms.
Not a warrant.
Well,
No, they would have had to have a court order.
It's a civil order is what they call it, because it's a civil. It's not supposed to be a criminal order. It's a civil order. But they were there to serve him with it.
That was poor timing. At 5:17 in the morning, nothing good happens before or after dark. Before daylight or after dark. And I was reading some comments on one of the Facebook pages I was on, and I had to unlike it because it was crazy. They were saying that the officers were there and they should be arrested. It was unconstitutional. Does everyone understand what happens when there's a court order for you to go do something? That if you're ordered to do it by the judge, they have to go do it, or they're going to be held in contempt and they're going to go to jail and lose their career. So a lot of people were saying, that they should be arrested. I'm not saying in this chat at all, but I'm saying just some of the stuff I read online, and it kind of, a lot of people don't quite understand how it works. And I'm not sure what the red flag laws are, but it sounds like it was something to do with domestic violence. There was some sort of domestic issue, some sort of fight. And a lot of this stuff is temporary. And some people, they dig their heels in and they fight against things that can easily be won in a slightly different manner. So sounds like what I was reading, that guy picked up a gun and a struggle ensued over the gun.
Well, he had put it down and then he picked it back up, according to the reporting I saw. See,
and I saw some of the headlines where some people would take that incident. Let's twist it, and they would say that man shot for not turning over his guns. That's not what happened. He grabbed the gun to an altercation ensued over that gun. What was going to be done with it, no one knows for sure, but that's what led to it. Just like sometimes I was looking at one where it said man shot for jaywalking. He was not shot for jaywalking. There was an incident, something took place, accident, and after that, a fight ensued, and he ended up getting shot. So anyway.
Well, David, I watched your video on this, actually, and one of the things that struck me about this particular implementation of red flag laws is that it's not coupled to any other kind of protective order. It's literally somebody reported that I think this guy is somebody who is able, depending on the red flag law in your state, it's maybe different than California, say. But so somebody reports, I think this guy is dangerous with a gun. There's no other criminal proceedings against him. There's no other civil or domestic violence restraining orders against him. It's just somebody pointed out, I think he might be dangerous with these guns. So the order is issued to go get them.
Who is this somebody?
Well, in this case, I think it was a sister, but it has to be, it depends on how the law is written. It's somebody that the law as written recognizes is able to make this report. Sometimes,
and see, I don't like that part of the law, because you could have a fight with your sister on the phone over something, or maybe mom died and the sister has a lot to gain if you're not around to claim, stuff from, after she's been buried, and she can go and do stuff because the cops have got a hold of you or whatever it is. It's just there's too many things. An ex-wife. You haven't done anything wrong, but your ex-wife is trying to keep your kids from you. This is something. It's just like somebody at work wanting your job and lying about something you did, hoping you get fired because they're the next person in line to be the manager. I've seen it. So I don't like.
It's all short term.
It is short term, and the reality is, the pragmatic reality is that you turn over the gun and you stay alive to fight another day, right? But the Constitution, here's where I get constitutional about it. I think the constitutional reality is that if you are going to, with a court order in hand, to deprive somebody of their firearms, you are messing with a constitutional right. And at minimum, the threshold for that ought to be you're legitimately charged with a crime. When it's a red flag law or an extreme risk protection order, there's no crime. There's no allegation of crime.
So you have to wait for them to commit a crime to prove they're dangerous.
Well, kind of, sort of, but look at it from this caveat. We say here that everybody should have the right to have any sort of weapon and take it with them anywhere. That a lot of us say that a lot, and I know some people go, "Oh, well, you don't want to have it here, you don't have it, whatever." Okay, the point being is, if you're that worried that Joe Blow across the street's got guns and you guys got an altercation and he's going to come across the street with his guns, and do you need to go and have the cops kick his door in and take his guns until they figure out whether or not he's safe? Here's the thought. Why don't you get a gun to protect yourself? When we argue that more guns save lives, less guns cause, you have the same right as he does to defend yourself. Now, he may take that tool to defend himself and use it in a bad way, but we don't know. If you want to say, well, don't judge everybody by one person's actions, then you can't prejudge his actions and take away his tools for defense that he could pervert and use for something offensively. What you can do is you can be proactive and you can go, I got one too.
I think that a lot of people are, I don't think anybody here in this chat has had that happen to them. I think we're what ifing it. And
no, it's happening. It may not be happening extremely
well, what
often,
I mean is
but it's
the person who's reporting the other person. Why should they be reporting the other person? Why don't they take steps to be able to defend themselves?
Some people are completely non-confrontational.
Well, that ain't my problem.
Back to what you had started to say a little bit ago, Sarge, when you said, does someone have to commit a crime before they're considered dangerous?
Every time there's a mass shooting, they say, why didn't they do anything? Why didn't they do anything? Well, we have to wait for them to have the mass shooting first.
Well, the red flag law in Maryland is pretty clear that you don't have to commit a crime. You just have to be suspicious.
But hence everybody taking the personal responsibility to defend themselves or have the ability to defend themselves at all times. So that's why we need to remove some of these restrictive laws.
Some people can't defend themselves.
Hold on. Let me, and this might be putting you on the spot, Sarge, and you can decline if you want to, because you're the only law enforcement officer in the panel. So based on your professional experience and a combination of professional and personal opinion, what do you think is the right thing? Let's say that somebody gets accused of being violent. Maybe I had a property dispute over a yard fence with my neighbor, and I live in a state that has an extreme risk protection order law. They don't like the fact that we got in each other's face. It didn't come to blows, but we both got heated. He knows that I hunt, I have guns. He's seen me carry gun cases in and out of the vehicle into the house, and he wants to pick a fight by calling the cops and saying, hey, I want to get a ERPO against my neighbor because, we got in each other's face. I don't want him to come shoot me.
See, I don't know the laws on where these are, where they have these extreme risk protection orders. The only thing I've read is where they've tried to twist I think it's the Lauderberg Amendment. It's the laws that cover domestic violence. And they've twisted them in a way in these articles that make it look like it's something new, and it's actually not. So I can't speak for all of that, but from what you just explained, if there was a red flag law in place, I think that would be outside of the scope of that, and that would not be what that was designed for. And it would be possibly be an abuse of that very good tool that could save someone's life. That would be outside of the constraints of it, and that would be an abuse of it.
Well, and I think that's what everybody in here is so upset about is the potential.
I think we're what ifing it.
I think somebody being able to put your name down there to have your firearms confiscated, even temporarily, because of these red flag laws, because you feel threatened, is not in the best interest of public safety. But somebody who goes out and commits a mass murder and kills all kinds of different people in an area that aren't all necessarily related, they don't all live in the same home, they're not all, yes, they're at the same school, or yes, they're in the same concert or the same church or the same bar or whatever. But that is where the public safety thing, and I've heard you say this before, Sarge, is that law enforcement is there for the safety of the public, not the individual. And that's why I was saying
In general.
it's up to somebody to take their own steps. And if they can't or they won't, I don't see why you should infringe on somebody else's rights who hasn't done anything wrong yet.
Well, exactly. But I have dealt with people that have no criminal record, some that are absolute monsters, that have wreaked havoc on their close family that no one from the outside saw until it got to the point that they needed some assistance getting out. I have seen this with my own two eyes. And these people are not the ones that any of you are defending. You are speaking about good people that lead a good life, that enjoy every constitutional right that they should have. There are people out there that are they're wolves in sheep's clothing. And I think that's what this is kind of geared towards.
I think that's the attempt. So the attempt is to get those people, and really the attempt about these ERPOs are designed to try to forestall the mass shooter, right?
Well,
or the domestic violent, the violently drunk husband or whatever. But
the crime of passion.
Yeah,
the neighbor on neighbor one, that should be held up kind of in the court system. Like, no, and I'm just saying should. I don't know what's going to happen, but that should be no. We need to, I need both of you in front of me in a court hearing, and we're going to figure this out at that point. But no, we don't need to issue this right this second. But
that would be great.
Family on family, we don't know.
They
we
don't
know
always.
what was written down. We don't know what they testified to. We just know what the media told us. I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm just saying we're all evolved enough to know that we may not be getting the right story, and it may be shaded in a way that to get a point across.
I think
Mr. Willis didn't get a chance to testify. The cops showed up to his house, and then that was the end of it. He never got a hearing.
I would be much happier with the laws if, instead of the result is court order to go and collect the person's firearms, how about a court order to go and collect the person, bring them to court, let them face their accuser and testify on their own behalf. If the judge still feels that this person needs to have their property taken away at that point, I think due process at that point has been served.
Yeah.
And, requiring to give up their property at that point. But I just don't like the fact that we're submitting people to losing life, liberty, or personal property without due process. And due process, the way I understand it, I'm not a constitutional scholar, not a law enforcement officer or a lawyer, but the way I understand due process, part of that is the right to face your accuser.
And you're innocent until proven guilty. I don't want to see a tragedy happen or somebody lose their life, but in the same sense, like I said, once again, I know you're saying that there's some people who aren't willing to do that or can't do that. Everybody can do that. It's just
not everyone has it.
That's why we have the freedoms we have in this country.
Not everyone has it in their soul to do that. Some people are really weak, and they're not lesser people because of it. There's some people out there that cannot defend themselves, that don't have the ability.
Well,
at the end of the day, though, again, and I know this might not be, everybody might not agree with this, but at the end of the day, there's no way to guarantee that bad stuff doesn't happen. You can only prepare yourself for when it hits the fan. And in a case like that, then, I mean, there's no way to make sure that the monsters aren't armed. And there's no way to legislate monsters, and there's no way to keep them out of the fold.
Sandhills, your idea I thought was better because they make him go in front of the judge with his accuser right then and there and deal with it instead of dragging it out for 3 weeks and rescheduling it and all this other stuff. Because, you take his guns,
when is the attorney going to have his time to to prepare his case.
If he really, really wanted to use a gun to hurt this other person and you take his guns, now he's pissed off, he's going to go get a gun. He'll find a way to get a gun. There are ways to get them. Or, you know what? He won't use a gun. He'll use his bare hands or a knife or his car or poison or whatever the heck it is. I'm not saying that by taking away one of the more popular tools to commit a crime with, that you are definitely going to trigger him. But it's just... I mean, you might as well take every kitchen out of it, but it doesn't matter because all he's got to do is go next door to his neighbor's house and get it, or steal, from any number of sources. So it really isn't really the saving grace. But I think having a judge address it immediately instead of dragging it out. Now, I realize, Sarge, the people in your line of work can't control that. You guys follow court orders. You don't dictate what the court does. Because I've seen a judge throw the book at a cop before, and I was totally floored because I thought you guys were in bed with each other, but apparently you're not.
No. How can this guy? Okay, let's say this guy, he's immediately picked up and taken to court. How can he prepare a defense? That takes time. But he's been picked up. So when is this time going to occur? Now where we've taken away his freedoms.
Yeah,
he can't move. He can't be restricted of movements. Yeah, now we're going to have this court date right this second.
But I still don't agree with taking his guns.
Yeah, I guess
I think now is some of this going to be abused? Everything is going to be abused. Every single good thing that's ever been done will be abused by some people. And it's up to the court systems. That's why you need to pay attention when you vote for your district court judges and your superior court judges. Find ones that see through this stuff. But yes, sometimes people will be infringed.
They're going to go in there. They're going to take all of his guns. They're going to take all of his guns, and then he's going to go to his ex-girlfriend's house with his chainsaw. Sorry, Travis.
Well, and I think that Obnoxious One made a good point here a while back in the chat, and I've been trying to keep up. Vanessa's got some stuff that we're not going to probably get time to expound on tonight, maybe in future weeks. So sorry, Vanessa, I just want to put a pin in it. I don't want to not get to you, but it's already after 11. So I'm going to have to wind this down. But I did see Obnoxious One say something about, gosh, where'd that go to now?
There needs to put an ERPO on the books.
Well, if there's an ERPO on the books, there needs to be a punishment for anybody who is guilty of false accusation too.
Agree 100%.
And make it a stiff penalty, so you think twice. Is this worth it? If I point this finger, I dang well better be prepared for what could come. And I want to be, sure that I feel this way, and I'm not just trying to get somebody in trouble.
See, that's the shady part.
If that happened more often, that would cure it.
But we should have that same law in the books for assault accusations, sexual or physical. Everything. There should be stiffer penalties for false accusations across the board. So all right,
it's pretty clear.
Super chat. That's the third one, totaling, I believe, $8 now for the night. So thank you, AA, for the super chats. He's just saying evil has existed for how long now? Since the beginning of time. If you believe what I believe, back to the Garden of Eden. So
back to Iraq.
Back to Iraq, or even before that. Apparently. So now we are going to wind this down just because I'm going to pull it because I need to get wound down and get to bed here before long. So I kind of expected we'd go a little bit longer since I started late, but we're going to wrap this up. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you everybody for contributing to the chat. On the YouTube side, we've had Sarge, we've had David Bowling Calaveras, we've had Vanessa Kitty, and Armament and Axes. We've had Rich White in here. We've had a lot of good conversation. I'm going to have to go back and reread some of this stuff. Zorro117 is in the house. We've had, who else have we had that I've seen up here? Ashley J in the house. I believe, is that Ashley from Gunstreamer? Is that right? We've got Jim in the chat, Obnoxious One, Gizzard Gary's been in the chat. Who am I missing here? We had a few earlier that I probably skipped over. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. I'm not as good at keeping up with everybody as some of them. Caleb Popejoy was here. Vash Matrix, Travis T. Who am I missing? I know there's somebody that I'm not going to call them out. Blue Steel was in the house. We've had a lot of people come and join us in the chat throughout the night. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we will go around the room real quick and just let everybody say their final thoughts and give any plugs for their channels or their videos coming up. So we'll start. And we've lost a few. So thanks to Calaveras 32 Special for joining us earlier in the night. Thanks to Midnight Range TM for joining us early in the night. Other Travis, just so you know, if you catch this later, I did finally see over in the side chat that you had wanted to say some stuff. So I'm sorry that I missed you. Hopefully we'll get you back in here maybe next week and give you a chance to say some of that stuff, or just shoot me an email and let me know what you were going to say. So David, thank you very much for joining us, and go ahead with final thoughts, sir.
Thanks for having me. I always appreciate a good conversation. So appreciate everybody in the chat and on the panel. Have a good night, everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Check out Gun Channels and guntube.org.
Guntube.org and gunchannels.com. Be there or be square. If you have not yet signed up on Gun Channels, it's free. So is guntube.org. You don't have to pay to play those videos. So go ahead and check those out. And if, the guntube.org, just so you guys all know, if you're not already aware, Night Strike is paying for that out of pocket. And he doesn't have a whole lot of funds coming in to support the servers that he's got. I think he's still losing money on GunTube. It's definitely not paying for itself. So go catch GunTube on Patreon and throw $1 or $2 a month, whatever you can afford his way, and just keep GunTube available. So thanks for that plug, David. All right, Gizzard Gary.
Thanks for having me. Check out my channel. Check out my website, gizzardgary.com. I'd like to reiterate checking out guntube.org and Gunstreamer, both of them fine places. And as always, like, share, and subscribe to Sandhills Shooter, and give him the bird.
Give him the bird, because the bird is the word.
The word.
All right. Thanks for being here, Gary. Jim Burgess, thanks for being able to give me a great idea to keep the chat going half the night here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Final thoughts. We're already starting to see the legislation being filed, so go write your congressman and tell them that they should vote down HR 7115.
All right. And moving right along, came into the chat late, but always contributes some really cool stuff. Before you go, Sarge, can you throw your email in the side chat for me so that I can include you moving forward? And final thoughts, sir.
I appreciate the because I caught you on the show, the late invite. It's my fault for being late. I was helping my oldest one get ready for his ROTC inspection tomorrow and everything. But I hope I didn't step in it too much. I was just trying to throw in my 2 cents on some of these orders, and that sometimes we got to read between the lines and kind of thinking about the practicality. That's
one of the biggest things on my channel is when I came up with the idea for 2A Tuesday and Sandhill Sweetheart and I kind of brainstormed on this. What we both agreed on is she doesn't want to be in the panel. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to be on camera or join as far as the actual talking goes. She's shy and I'm not. But at the same time, one of the things we both agreed on is we don't just want another sounding board, another echo chamber where we all talk about the same stuff that everybody else is, and then we all agree on everything. We want to dig in and get the discussion going. We know that excuse me, we know that it's healthy for not everybody to have the same ideas, and we promote that here on this channel. So don't ever be afraid to come in one of my chats and say something completely opposite of what I'm saying or anybody else. As long as you know why you feel the way that you feel or think the way that you think, I'll respect you. So
okay. I appreciate that. I mean, I am pro 2A. I am pro 2A to the core. That's why I teach concealed carry. Sometimes I break even on my time. I don't make any money teaching concealed carry. I definitely don't make any money doing YouTube. I am it's an expensive hobby, but I do this because I want to. But also with what I do, I see the other side of it. There are some people that are not they're not the ones we're defending. We're the ones that if that person happened to be married to our daughter, we'd be wanting something done. But sometimes in these chats, we defend that person in theory. So I just want to sometimes you got to look outside. You got to think about other things.
That's why I like having fresh perspectives.
Yeah.
I like having people come in that haven't been, on this chat every week.
Yeah. Like I said, Pro 2A every day. I
appreciate I wasn't questioning that. Just I
just wanted to throw that out there.
Anybody who ever comes in and joins 2A Tuesday or anything on my channel, opposing viewpoints are always welcome. When we get into the night that I finally decide we're going to talk about abortion, I don't know anybody who is on YouTube and is pro-choice per se, but I'm not going to block anybody from coming in and speaking their piece on my channel.
Exactly.
So anybody that ever wants a link and wants to come in and share their opinion, just because it's not mine, doesn't mean that it's not welcome. We might not agree, but I might not respect what you believe, but I'll respect the fact that you have a reason for it, unless you're just echoing what you heard on CNN or NBC or Fox. I don't care. If you're just parroting, then I have no respect. But if you know why you think what you think, I don't care who it is.
Oh yeah, exactly. So like I said, I appreciate the invite, and I'd like to be in. I'd like to jump in on another one of these at some point.
Sure, anytime. I'll add you on the distribution list. I shotgun the link out to everybody. The first 9 people can join. So
awesome. Thank you.
Get in early. All right. Thanks for being here, Sarge. Squibload, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invite. Good show, good panel. We started with one topic and it kind of rolled into something and it worked out. I thought it flowed really good. I would like to say something for the people who haven't been on this side. When you're doing a hangout, whether you're doing it from your phone or your computer or whatnot, the screen's a little bit different than what you see on YouTube. So from your end, you're there watching the side chat for us in the hangout. You're watching the YouTube feed. You're watching the Gun Channels feed. You may have to refresh the Gun Channels feed. The YouTube feed might lag. It's a little bit different when you're on the other side. So for those people that are in the live chat or posting stuff or whatnot, just try to understand that sometimes you get sensory overload when you're trying to bounce back and forth. I can tell you on a cell phone to be on the hangout and then to minimize and then go to the YouTube and then scroll through and read the chats and type something in on the tiny keyboard and then go back, and it's sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming. The more you do it, the better you get at it. But still, some nights it's just like, I just want to do the show. I don't want to read the comments. But you were saying there's a lot there in the live chat, and I know that last night on Lock and Load, Vanessa Kitty had a lot to say in the live chat, and I was on my phone. I wasn't watching. I went back this morning, and I'm like, wow, she was on fire. So I want to go back and read the live chat. But for anybody out there who hasn't done a hangout, I just wanted to let you know a little bit of the technical side of it, and that's why maybe not everything gets read. It's sometimes it's overwhelming. So
absolutely, and I don't know if you could see us when you're on your phone, but I saw Sarge nodding his head and I was nodding my head. That's exactly true. So yeah, anybody who if I don't see your comment on the YouTube chat or on the Gun Channels chat, first of all, if you put an @ symbol and write @ and then the exact way that our name is written in the chat, then it highlights it for us and we get to see it, bright orange, and it catches our eye better. So you can do that. And anybody at any time in the panel, if you're watching the YouTube chat or the Gun Channels chat, and something comes up that needs to be addressed, don't be afraid to cut me off and point something out too. So I definitely welcome that. I don't want anybody thinking that their comment went unnoticed or wasn't important just because I'm not as good at multitasking as others might be on their shows. I've been doing this for 6 episodes now, and that's it. So clearly I've got a lot to learn, and there's some things that I'll definitely get better at as time goes. So thanks for that, Squib. All right, Travis P11, always a pleasure having you join.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I apologize for not saying a whole lot. I'm dealing with a sore throat and a stuffy head right now. But otherwise, no, man. Everybody that's listening, Subscribe to those people that are here on the panel. They got great channels. Great show. I appreciate the invite. It's always fun doing this chat. And yeah, man, shall not be infringed.
Absolutely. All right. And again, anybody who is hanging out this long, wants to support the channel, thanks AA one more time for all the super chats. Because of you, I have now gotten over $10 total that YouTube has made on this channel since I started doing podcasts or going live. I'd never gone live before the Tulsa trip.
Do they keep part of that in the super chats?
Yeah.
Or do you get all of it?
No, you don't get all of it. YouTube
I don't know.
It's like what's a 70-30 split, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a $2 super chat, I get $1.40 goes into the actual total, but I don't know how big it has to get before they'll actually pay it out. But that's probably a couple years away from ever getting any of that money that's building up in that. So yeah, we're at about $14 now. So so yeah, this doesn't obviously make money. That's not what we're about. Anybody that wants to support the channel, super chats are great. You can sure go to Patreon and become a patron. Over there, I've got 3 levels on Patreon. We've got Sandhillers, which are $1 a month. If you want to do $5 a month, you get to be an outlaw, and if you do $10 a month, you get to be a vigilante. And I'm not endorsing outlaws or vigilantism. However, there are some ties to such in the county where I came from. It used to be Mob County before it was officially named Kippaha, what it is now. So do some history on the what was it? Kid Wade or Doc Middleton. Those were some real live Nebraska outlaws that used to ride up and down not very far from where I grew up. So some cool history there. So vigilantes and outlaws have a distinct tie to where I came from, so that's why I named those that. And AA's throwing one more out there. Thanks, Armament and Axes, for that. So this has been 2A Tuesday, and you can check it out on Gunstreamer. You can check it out on YouTube, which is just fun to say. This will show up on guntube.org after it renders, and you can catch this and all of the other cool stuff on my channel over at Sandhills Shooter. So go check that out. Check out everybody else that's been in the chat. Sarge is putting up some cool patches. If we're going to play that game, then we've got to end the way that we end here. So good night, everybody. God bless, and bye, Felicia.
Adios, Felicia. Adios, Felicia.
Shall not be in Felicia.
Shall